The threat of authoritarian approach, the growth of right-wing radical and even neo-Nazi movements on a global scale, the normalization of hate speech in mass media and politics, the narrowing of the space of civil society, the weakening and marginalization of leading human rights and other public organizations, the problem of keeping artificial intelligence as a genetic engineering under the state and public control, the threat of genetic manipulation leading to extreme forms of social inequality, protection of elements of private life under the domination of total surveillance technologies. New economies located in wealthy and prosperous nations, while less lucrative traditional industries are being transferred to countries with a cheaper labor and softer environmental regulation. Why we are listening to the wrong recipes? Because we don't want to listen to history and we don't want to understand time. If you don't understand that and moving different direction, if you have a slogan, let's make America great again. So not to look forward, but to look back. Mr. Putin, for example, is doing that every day. He's saying that Russia must be a special civilization. We would pay for that, a big, big price, because it's counterproductive. It's contradiction with the time and history. The world society lost the vision of future. The answer is to think strategically, counting not for today and not for the near future, for decades. Economy is a field of activity, human use of natural resources, household management, production and distribution, meaning human activity to ensure life. Economics is a little bit different from that, maybe not even a little bit. It's a kind of science. It's a knowledge about how people can use natural and other resources most effectively. And secondly, economics, how I understand it, this is a science of human behavior in connection with the provision of their lives. Economics as a science and policy is activity to ensure and improve the well-being of people. That's what I think. Unlike business, the goal of which is to earn as much money as possible and not to go to jail. That's all. In principle, that's all. It's a joke, but there is a grain of truth in it.
Yeah.
So this is my answer on the question, why does economics matter? Because it's the area of human activity which support life. And this is not possible to live without it. Economics as a science deals with the human behavior and the psychology of people about the production and distribution of goods. This is a subject with very many unknowns. We can say that economic science, academic economics, is going just now through, maybe you would be surprised, a period of youth, and therefore assumes that it can model its subject with the help of mathematics. However, there are too many unknowns in the subject, and therefore any mathematical model in economics is very far from reality. There is a scientific similarity. As my supervisor said to me 50 years ago, this is done by the people, by those who do not know mathematics well enough to be a mathematician and do not understand the real economy enough to be an economist. This is, of course, one more joke, but academic economics is an academic science, is very far from practice and reality. Therefore, it does not really see and does not understand the prospects. It couldn't, for example, predict the crisis in 2007, 2008, and is ready and easily serves any political mainstreams. Economic policy is different. Ideally, this is making decisions about improving people's well-being and therefore about the efficiency of the economy as a whole, and not just its individual sectors, for example, financial or banking. At the same time, it should be understood that well-being is, of course, not only income. Of course, income, but not only. It is the environment and free time and education and medicine and culture. Economic science, academic economics sometimes helps, but only if it is as close to practice and reality as possible. Today, I can say that it is a gratifying fact that this year the Nobel Prize of Economics was awarded not for abstract mathematical models, but, for example, to David Card from Berkeley for his empirical contribution of labor economics. I was a graduate in 1973 with a degree in labor economics. This is a very interesting and pleasant for me event. Using, as you know, using natural experiments, David Card has analysis the labor market effects of minimum wages, immigration, and education. His students from the early 90s challenged conventional wisdom, leading to new analysis and additional insights. I'm not going to repeat the press release, but I want to say that the Economist in the recent days said, in fact, no amount of data can reliably predict the future. Unfathomably complex dynamic economists rely not on Big Brother, but on the, now I want to underline what the Economist said, on the spontaneous behavior of millions of independent firms and consumers. Instant economics isn't about clairvoyance. Instead, it's promise a prosaic but transparent, be better timeline and more rational decision-making. So that's what I can say answering this question about economic science and economic policy. Economic science is something which can be real if it related to the reality, or it can be absolutely unreal if that's only mathematical models. And economic policy, it's about well-being of the people, and it's a kind of decisions. It's not very often related to the economic models. So that's what can I say.
Wonderful.
I'm ready for the third question. The question is very broad and from my point of view, incredibly important. I must say that I discussed this and related topics in detail in my book, Real Economique, which is related to Realpolitik, Real Economique. And the name of the book is Real Economic, The Hidden Cause of the Great Recession, which was published by Yale University Press exactly 10 years ago. So there, I want to explain, to answer your question, to explain four main theses. First, it's the thesis that morality, not individual morality as personal qualities, but social morality, a set of informal rules, the observance of which is necessary for life success, is part of economic life. Second, the second main idea which I want to share with you is that public morality, unlike, by the way, individual morality, is changing and changing its role in society and the economy, largely depending on objective conditions of development. That is, not only the economy depends on the state of public morality, but this morality itself depends on the economy. That is, unlike individual virtues and vices, social morality is not so much from nature or from God as from the conditions in which history, natural conditions, and features of economic life put a particular society. The third main idea answering this very important question, from my point of view, is that the picture of that mainstream science, more precisely social sciences, draws for society does not reflect reality. Often, in general, does not reflect reality. The fourth thesis, which is an important part of the whole story, is what can be conditionally designated as transit from post-industrial to post-modern society and economy. It's a very important issue, which will take much more time to debate. So I would try just now to say some important things which I think in this four major theses about your question about what role does economics play in society and does it work and so on. Society, first, society is not composed of homo economicus. Ethics are a part of social life, as well as culture, intellectual values, family life, personal ambitions and relations, irrational feelings, etc. There are things that are not subject for market, reasoning, the behavior, and ethics are one of them. But there is more to it than that. Economy itself, especially modern capitalist market economy, is very much dependent on moral constraints and public ethics to function smoothly and efficiently, effectively, whatever. Essentially, it is a matter of trust, as we know. Everybody knows that. In the final analysis, the adoption of a decision in business simply depends on whether people feel like putting at risk the resources at their disposal. And here, continued trust in the efficacy of rules, economic game, and in institutions which enforce these rules when necessary, is an indispensable condition for the effective functioning of the market system. Even the slightest change in the levels of confidence as existing in existing institutions displayed by economic agents generally has a powerful impact on economic and especially financial indicators. From this perspective, only the ability to support or strengthen public confidence in economic policy makers and state institutions in a capitalist market economy will determine the economy long-term future. Confidence or trust, in turn, is linked to the existence of public morality. Morality, rather than the legal or illegal pressure orchestrated by the state, greatly facilitates daily actions aimed at the production of goods, exchanges, savings, investments, and other basic economic actions. It provides the necessary degree of trust to conduct millions of daily economic transactions without thinking each time of the necessity to guard oneself against the possible breach of contract or act of fraud by numerous counterparties. In the absence of public morality, a very large portion of today's business activities would be impossible because of prohibitive costs of securing enforcement of contracts. Here is the important note. By the way, 10 years ago, when I published this book, it was completely impossible even to discuss these ideas. The word morality in connection with the economy, economics, whatever, they said to me in all debates, they were saying to me that this is a praying, but not speaking about the economy. Now, it's a widely spread idea. Everybody is talking about that. So this is interesting how the time has changed. One important note, morality, ethics, what is meant here is not the issue. What I mean here is not the issue of individual vices or virtues, but collective attitudes. It's a public morality. Vices or virtues are eternal and no more prevalent in human beings today than they were in Shakespeare's era. But public attitudes may change. And they do change. I want to even to stress it. The challenges for an economy rest not with individual vices or weaknesses, but with the public attitudes and reactions which may channel individual behavior into various directions. Government coercion to enforce compliance with the principles and rules of market relations is effective only when most economic agents follow these rules by virtue of adherence to principles of public morality, personal moral convictions, and sense of responsibility. In such case, when 9 economic agents out of 10 stick to the rules, not because of daily overt coercion or control on the part of the state, but because of their consider it fair and rewarding, inevitable violations of these norms are prevented or punished in accordance with the majority sentiment and not against it, with the minimum use of pressure. As a result, general compliance with the rules of the game set by society is achieved at minor expense or at the very least acceptable cost of the economy. I can give a lot of examples of that, but I think it's more or less clear what I mean with this. Next point, second main idea, is that public morality, unlike by the individual morality, is changing its role in society and the economy, largely depending on objective conditions of development. It is important to note that this process of erosion, as I understand it, is not related to any change of human psychology, which always remains roughly the same, but rather to the weakening of the society's collective will to force its individual members to respect and abide by the patterns of behavior conforming to public interest and ethical norms. In other words, it is not the matter of people getting spoiled or immoral, but the matter of weakening disciplining role of public ostracism, punishing antisocial behavior. So it's a question of the state of society. Now, one can say that there had been a serious reasons for public morality to get weakened. Why moral enforcement of fair play rules was losing its strength? I think it's an interesting idea. First, there is a set of sociological, cultural, and political reasons. Social patterns change as consumer society psychology takes root. Aggressive advertising, both overt and hidden, imposes consumer society attitudes as the dominating mindset. Traditional hierarchy of different needs is being reconsidered. The system of individual values and goals undergoes deep change. Professional career and reputation, public recognition, and respect are losing weight as individual values and aspirations. The society itself undergoes restructuring. First, swift changes in lifestyle and consumption patterns. Society structure is being remodeled, social groups and classes redefined. Secondly, traditional norms of behavior developed by traditional classes lose former power of individuals. New generation is taking control of society. Higher college education gains prevalence for the growing proportion of the people. Hard toil as a means of survival because of purely abstract notion. Work, ethics, and personal responsibility for securing satisfaction of basic needs are losing its ground. This first. Secondly, new international environment. I'm speaking about the period until recent times. Recent times, just last 2 or 3 years, it's a little bit different story already, even from that what I'm going to say. And I'm trying to explain my views on the very general direction. The West have no rivals, substantial rivals. Only just now the West created itself, the rival as a China, itself, did it absolutely artificial in the last 40 years because they want to have a cheap labor. They want to have a cheap labor to have a very high profits, and they didn't care about what political system is in China. Now they just came to the idea that this is maybe a problem. It's how the selfish ideas, when you want simply to make money in the economy, international economy, bringing you to some kind of crisis. It was made just artificially, simply because the labor in China was zero. And China just invited all kinds of businesses. And then now everybody has a problem in the West. It's a very funny story, if it will not bring us to a big tears. But I'm speaking about more general story. The West had no rivals until the last period of time in international affairs, as communism has been defeated in a Cold War. Political elites face no powerful outside challenge or real threat. Hence, there is no external pressure to keep elites alert and vigilant of fraud and waste. No competition. No competition, as everywhere. Also, demise of two-polar world model gave more freedom for the West to act in international politics. Formal laws and established rules of international behavior are gradually giving way to political opportunism in international affairs, and that also inevitably affects public morality at home. Then, there is a set of reasons within economy and economic system itself. First, economy is growing more sophisticated and more post-industrial. Post-industrial economy, third sector industries are raising their share in the economy. What means post-industrial economy? Third sector industries are raising their share in the economy. Owners of intellectual assets and resources account for a progressively larger proportion of calculated costs and derived incomes. Intermediate transactors deriving their share of revenue from the sales of final product grow in number and sophistications, in numbers and sophistications. Cost calculation is becoming less transparent or even not transparent at all, and more manipulative, which is stimulating intellectual machinations to derive profit from thin air, simply from air. Profits sometimes coming more and more. Private business becomes infected with the bureaucratic practices, such as growth of multiplication through the deliberate want and needs formation, shielding itself from outside control, creating an air of mystery to boost importance of its activities. You can see it almost every day. I'm not going to go into details in disproportional growth of financial sector. Everybody knows about this story, but nothing changes since the crisis of 2007, 2008, 2009, nothing changes. The other issue, third one, is the growing role of the brand economy. The brands just making advantages to the economy in such a way that it is not related to the substance. But one of the most interesting thing is appearance of a new economy. We are witnessing rapid growth of new economy consisting of businesses aimed first at creating new market niches, market innovation, and secondly, resorting to a non-tangible resources such as knowledge, information, creativity, influence as the means to create new value. This is a high tech. Second, new economy is, as compared to traditional one, is first, less transparent, hard to calculate actual costs and consumer value production turns into a black box. And secondly, here more virtual. Traits, images, emotions, fetishes, and difficult to regulate. All this is very difficult to regulate by setting up standards, norms, and restrictions, and whatever, sanctions, maybe something else. As a result, it creates immense opportunities for the self-interested machinations, intellectual alchemy, and abuse of trust, unfair or fraudulent business practices. 10 years ago, nobody wanted even to discuss these issues. Now it's a commonplace, and it's also, I'm not going to make the citation from the Economist once again, but in the recent articles of the Economist, it's well explained. Then the growing political power of the new business. Interest groups connected to different segments of new economy, first and foremost the financial sector. And now I want to add the internet giants, which yesterday changed their names, for example, some of them. I don't know what is the reason, but they're even changing their names, showing that this is endless story. The new symbol is just like that, endless story. Anyhow, it's really interesting. So financial sector, internet sector consolidate their influence and power over mass media, political and academic elites. Agenda and content of public debate is increasingly influenced by groups developing and controlling new opportunities for making big, easy money. Redistribution of financial flows to the benefit of innovative intellectual business is justified as fair and progressive. A change in values is occurring as a creativity and innovation. I want to stress it. A change in values is occurring as a creativity and innovation. Replace progress of production capabilities and technical abilities as the highest economic virtue and value. Now, you must see it. New international division of labor. New economies located in wealthy and prosperous nations, while less lucrative traditional industries are being transferred to countries with a cheaper labor and softer environmental regulation. Now, this debate, which countries want just to do something for climate change, in the area of climate change and so on, it's necessary to recall that business from the West came to these countries, especially and exactly because that countries were not making any rules and any limitations for exactly this question of climate. So they were ready to make a dirty air in the other countries. Now the question is why you don't want to take part in that. It is also affecting mainstream ideology in the West. Goals of equal opportunities and reducing gaps between nations give way to meritocracy, minimization of redistribution, and extremely liberal economic attitudes applied to international economy. Now, the third main idea is that the picture that mainstream science, more precisely social science, draws for society does not reflect reality. I can speculate on that very widely. If you would be interested, I'm ready to speak on that. But I think it is more or less clear, and this new scientist formed a closed community with a distinct hierarchy, awarding themselves prizes and titles, dispatching lucrative positions and grants, undertaking research for private companies for both image building and practical purposes. So this is a reality, this is truth, and that gives absolutely inadequate view in this area. Only one more remark on that. Research community and academia have tried hard to produce an impression that economics, as well as sociology and perhaps political studies too, have transformed themselves from humanities to sciences. A large role in this was played by mathematicians who faced contracting demand from engineering industries and the military. Under conditions, they turned to economics, which met rising demand from the financial sector, which looked for instruments to expand, as well as from government agencies which were in need of nice and convenient justification for their policies. And newly bred economists offered a nice variety of lucrative products in the form of beautiful mathematical models, individually designed to satisfy every possible whim of those who cared mathematical dressing for their business policies. Naturally, they portrayed themselves as a high-minded, disinterested scholars, warriors of truth, but should that be taken at face value? This is a question to all people who are listening to us. They can make a conclusion themselves. And finally, the fourth thesis to answer the questions which you asked me is, which is an important part of the whole thing, is what can be conditionally designated as a form post-industrialism to postmodernism. Developed economists as a whole are embarking on a new stage associated by some sociologists with the concept of postmodernism. At this stage, the content of economic activity, if understood as satisfaction of reasonable conscious needs of the consumer and understandable and rational manner, is gradually assuming a lesser role of compared to satisfying instilled wants or social ambitions of consumers. As such, new links grow in number of scope, becoming ever more complex and filled with the advanced contact. Their original rationale came to be increasingly blurred and sometimes totally missing, while the links themselves occurred some independent raison d'etre. If we consider that such ideas is correct, then we must admit that no value-based judgment can be applied to the problem of what should be produced and traded. Thus, the only possible criteria for telling good from bad, from telling to say what is good and to say what is bad, efficient from the inefficient and true from false, is the amount of revenue and profits received. Such an approach leaves no place for moral judgment or value-based regulation, becoming a sort of reincarnation of Hegel's statement that what is actual is rational. If an activity brings the revenues and profit, it should be considered both rational and necessary, provided it is waged within the boundaries of legality. It's a very big question, and I'll be happy to comment much more things, but finally, losing a lot of, from my point of view, important things. Finally, another main thesis from that of a generalizing nature, which perhaps constitutes one of the highlights of what we are talking about, is that the life in general and economic life in particular does not obey ideological, verified, and strictly shaped laws of evolution. It is impossible to say with certainty that society, in particular Western society, has emerged from such a state, has passed through such and such stages, and is now naturally moving in such and such direction. This is also a part of answering the question, and will come to such and such results. Everything is quite flexible. And this applies to the economy, politics, and society as a phenomenon. First, because if you look closely at the process that are described or that are otherwise addressed, it becomes apparently that although they embrace some seeds, of course, will still 30 or 40 years ago, no one, absolutely no one, I could not clearly predict and describe what would result in 3 or 4 decades. And secondly, and this is perhaps the most important thing, the last half a century has shown that not only an individual, but society as a whole are amenable to purposeful suggestion. The whole new economy, in essence, is built on the fact that the needs of the consumer, his preferences, are not a given. They can be influenced and even shaped for themselves. There are, of course, certain limitations, and human consciousness is not a white sheet. Something can be written on it, and something is difficult. Something will not work at all. But in general, the formation of collective needs and preferences, even ideas, the life shows is possible. Accordingly, business does not have to adapt to society. It is possible to a large extent, on the contrary, to adapt it to itself, meaning to adapt the society to business. So it's an endless topic, an endless story, which from my point of view is very interesting. And I'm a little bit limiting myself because I want just to answer another questions and not just to make you sleep.
No, this is fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm ready for the 4th question.
Okay.
So,
Let me tell you also from my side, it's really fantastic.
I'm sorry. I'm really reading the paper which I prepared for our debate.
Wow,
wonderful.
Because I
It's an
want
honor.
to give the real message, not just to blah blah blah, just like with a cup of coffee, but to send you a message. Of course, you maybe expect that I'm going to speak about Russia, but Russia is a very special story. It's not related to what you're answering, to your questions at all. It's completely different. Maybe tragic or very, very painful story, but it's a very separate thing. So I'm speaking about the world economy and the new economy in the world. That's what I want to share with you, with the key words, which maybe later would be put all together, and that'll be a vision. So I want to give you impression of the vision. That's what I want to do. Firstly, all these problems have an economic aspect of inside. So you can't do without the economy simply nothing. And by the way, this economic aspect already has a direct impact on the situation with the solving problems. On the eve of the meeting on climate, it became known that the governments of some countries, Russia, China, and Australia, and even Japan, and even Australia, and even Japan, I would put it, United Arab Emirates, tried to influence experts to mitigate the hazard of assessments of those emissions, the reduction of which will negatively affect the economy of these countries. So it's related to what I said to you just before. It's a very clear example. The meeting on climate must start tomorrow or whatever. And some of the leaders even not coming there. For example, Xi Jinping is not coming, Putin is not coming, just exactly because of that problems. Secondly, there is a feedback. Unresolved and growing global problems are becoming an increasingly serious factor affecting the economy. Thirdly, in general, it is very difficult to imagine how problems and issues related to the economy can be isolated from the global agenda. The world is changing, moving, and economics, like other sciences, are means of cognition, understanding, awareness of the changes taking place. On the eve of global related events, as a result of the pandemic, and the understanding began to come, yes, very slowly, but the threat of a new economic crisis is not so much in the stock market. It jumps as in the deepening political crisis in the core countries of the world economy. That's what we see. Look of what's going in whatever country there is a signs of political crisis or political crisis itself. It is very, very, very simple to see, very, very clear. Yeah. So, however, with a growing understanding of the need to act, there are more and more unanswered questions. I want to suggest you a pyramid, which I prepared for you, of interrelated problems in this area. The crisis of the capacity of political institutions and trust in them on a global scale. The crisis of the capacity of political institutions and trust in them on the global scale, from the United States and Great Britain to India and Israel, even Israel. You know how elections were just appear there. The threat of authoritarian approach, the growth of right-wing, radical, and even neo-Nazi movements on a global scale, the normalization of hate speech in mass media and politics, the narrowing of the space of civil society, the weakening and marginalization of leading human rights and other public organizations in Western countries. You know all those things very, very well, much better than I. Growing atomization and the emergency of an asocial society. The extreme strengthening and consolidation of income and opportunity inequality, within and between the countries, within and between the countries. The prospect of the disappearance of professions displaced by artificial intelligence, with a sharp decline in demand and global economic growth. Climate change, increased frequency of natural disaster, the risk of flooding, of major megacities, and total pollution, mass extinctions of biological species. So I can continue all that. It's a little bit dark story. The problem of keeping artificial intelligence as a genetic engineering under the state and public control, the threat of genetic manipulation leading to extreme forms of social inequality, protection of elements of private life under the domination of total surveillance technologies. So the problems which I described have no answers until today, and it's have no common policy on that. This is the problem, that the mankind is coming to a new, let's say, fourth industrial revolution, and the major point of this fourth industrial revolution is that the developments in, let's say, new technologies are coming much faster than the people are able to operate with them and to understand them. This is the point of crisis, and there is no answer on that. And if you have a closed, untransparent government, like in Russia, for example, which is a kind of group, corporate group, if that kind of government have in its hands these new technologies, it's a big problem for the people, big problem for the humanity in this country, for all the people, because the repressions and the control is on the unbelievable level. In China, it's a state policy, but in China and in Russia, it's even just more special. They're simply using all these technologies. If they can use it against the elections in the United States, then you can imagine how they can use it inside its own country. So this is some points answering your question, economics and wider environment. So of course, economics is a part of everything, but there is no solution in economics itself. Wider environment goes to the questions of government, to the governments and societies. And there is no answers on very important issues with this. So we can go forward. That's what I want to say. It's endless story to speak on that, endless simply. So Your question, actually, in the question, in that kind of question itself, there is also some kind of medieval attitude to the economist as a predictor who does something chemical, guesses from insights in books, and then gives advice. If the advice is wrong, his head is cut off. It's a very special attitude to whoever and to the economist itself. Maybe some economists want to present themselves that they're just gurus which can look forward, but don't take it too seriously. In fact, responsibility, from my point of view, is a completely different thing. This is not a punishment for the mistake of any particular person. Responsibility for a politician and an economist is the ability to have a broad global vision, to understand the interconnection of everything happening in the world, as well as to understand how recommended and accepted decisions participate in these global connections. Responsibility is also closely linked to values and goal settings. And as for the punishment, the point is not whether a particular person will suffer it or not, but that everyone suffers from the absence of appropriate decisions. As the Russian historian Glichevsky said once, history is not a teacher, but a supervisor of Magister Vita, mentor of life. History is not a teacher, but a mentor of life. It does not teach anything, but only punishes for not knowing the lessons. I think this expression is the right answer to that question, because it's our fault that we are listening to the wrong recipes. Why we are listening to the wrong recipes? Because we don't want to listen to history, and we don't want to understand time. What means to be a politician? It means to listen to the steps of the God, not to think that you can change the life. It is necessary to understand the substance of time and substance of history for that moment. Then it works. If you don't understand that and moving different direction, if you have a slogan, let's make America great again. So not to look forward, but to look back. Or if you are saying that you want to make Great Britain great again, and so on, it means that you have a conflict with time. You have a conflict with history. This is clear. So you are going to find this other man and to say that this is your fault? No, it doesn't work in this way. So it is responsibility of the society not to go to the great America back again, and not to try to make a British Empire back again. It'll be a big trouble, and it's clear. That's what I want to say. And it is not the economists are guilty. When the prime minister thinks that he would make a new deal with China, which is more effective than with Europe, than what Europe can do with China, and then Hong Kong story happened, so no deal, because you are supporting Hong Kong, and Chinese don't want to deal. You want to have a deal with Americans, and the president of the United States is Irishman, and he have a problem with what's going on in Ireland. You have no borders. You don't know how to regulate that. So one after another, you have problems simply because you don't want to listen to the time in history. So that is what I want to say.
That's
This is question number 5.
that was question number
We can
5.
continue that. Mr. Putin, for example, is doing that every day. He's saying that Russia must be a special civilization. Special civilization. We would pay for that a big price, because it's counterproductive. It's contradiction with the time and history. You can't take the whole country back. And this is the issue which is very important, that the world society lost the vision of future. It's a general problem. It's not only a problem of Putin. It's also a problem of Trump. It's also a problem in Europe. Look at Poles. Look at all the stories. Because of political entropy. We are living in the times of political entropy. And that means the dissolving of the politics, because politics is still organized like the 19th century. And the life is changing all that. And there is no answer. How political parties had to work, how elections must work, how all that to organize in the current time, not just it was 100 years, 50 years ago, just now. And nobody's even trying to answer that question. I mean, on the highest political levels. I can speculate on that more and more, because it's the political entropy, the destroying the political institution. Time is destroying political institution. The progress of current technologies, data technologies, they are just destroying political institutions, seriously destroying them.
Yeah.
And populism is coming on the top of this. Populism is coming. Look at France. Look at candidates for presidency in France. Le Pen and this new person, which are almost far right people. They together have more than Macron. They have 32%, 15 and 17. And Macron have 24 or something like that. That means that the big part of society is moving to that direction. Which direction? Backwards, simply backwards. They don't see the future. They don't understand what is the future. And the economy is a part of that. They don't understand their role. So we can go to the sixth question. I would try to speak as a professor of economics in that way, just to answering this question. I would say capitalism is a system based on private ownership of the means of production and their use for profit. At the same time, private property is the basis of, and that's what I want to say from my point of view, is very important. And I understood that from the Russian experience after the end of Soviet Union. Here I want to stress what I'm going to say. Private property, in fact, is the basis of self-expression and the basis of freedom. And is very important to have a self-respect and to have a life without fear. For all these things, for life without fear, for self-respect, for freedom, private property, the institution of private property is extremely important. That's what I think. For example, Russia didn't realize this principle already 30 years after the Soviet Union. Oligarchy and connection between property and state authority, connection between business and authority and state and power, didn't allow us to solve this very, very important problem. I think that business is an organic element of human life. I mean, entrepreneurship, the natural feeling of the man to realize itself through business. Not every person, of course, not every, but a big, big part of the people. For them, it's absolutely crucial. So, if that is true, if that is a really organic element of human life, then the future lies in what will be relationship between the participants. The relationship between the owners, employees, society, and the state, answering the question whether the state is a participant or the providing system of the whole economic thing. Why this is so important, as I told you before, and now I want to give a just citation from Financial Times, which came yesterday. Artificial intelligence gives unscrupulous governments new capabilities to snoop on, control, and potentially coerce their citizens. So what is saying about it? Is saying about that the changes in capitalism would be dramatic, but they would be within the idea of private property and entrepreneurship. That's what I believe. I can't imagine how in another way the people is going to realize themselves. I was born in a society where there was no private property at all, zero. And I understand how the people feel themselves and how many people, even with the danger to be in prison for 25 years or even to be killed, were trying to make their own business underground, because that is the part of the human being. This is like art, like music, like poetry. For some people, music, art, and poetry is to being able to make business. They like it. It's not only for profit, it's for life. So I think that the future and how I'm going to define the capitalism, if the basis of capitalism is private property, then it's a part of life with the all consequences of that kind of definition. Maybe the word capitalism is not very good, even as you know, I told you before, and you know it, even the word Facebook appeared not to be very good at the moment, and they changed the name. Maybe they would change the name of capitalism, but the substance would stay. It's a possibility for the people to act and to realize themselves. That's what I want to say. That's what I think. So it would depend what kind of relations will be between them. So we can go. The seventh question is coming just directly from that, the answer on that question. First, my first part of the answer is that I don't know. You're asking me the question that I simply don't know. I simply don't know. But I will try to give the answer, but the beginning of that kind of answer, I don't know. If capitalism is a relationship between private property, labor, and profit, then these relations will always be, as far as I understand. The other thing is maybe artificial intellectual would do something. But that will not be a capital. It will be something completely different. No? The question is, what? Can capitalism survive in its current form? And the question is, and why capitalism have to survive in its current form? It will change and modernize all the time. It's changing every day. We were speaking about that. What direction? It's another question, but it would be changing all the time. And the most important thing that we already feel that it is changing to the direction which need correction. Nobody knows how to do this correction, but a lot of people see, not only me, see that there's some problems with this. It's for us, it's very important to read Adam Smith as often as possible in order to understand what means market economy and what means capitalism, and just to try to bring there, because it's a very important point. So it's going to change and modernize. The pandemic has already shown that there will be changes. In general, this is a question of name. Today, capitalism is an important part of persons' self-realization. And in that sense, it's the same, which is economy. So what happened in the Soviet Union? We were trying to implement socialism and planned economy. In fact, it doesn't work. It didn't work. We see it. Now, China is trying just to do something with capitalism. We'll see what happens. It will be very soon. Xi Jinping is trying now, after he got everything from the Western world, now he's trying just to jump away. We'll see to what extent real capitalism can be matched, put in together with that kind of leadership, with that kind of state, with that kind of semi-totalitarian rule. We'll see what would happen. I think it wouldn't work. I don't know in what way it wouldn't work, but I think it would work. But I don't know. We'll see. So the answer is that it would change. It would change. It's not going. And by the way, you said USSR didn't survive. Yes, but Russia is still there. You said Feudal China didn't survive. Yes, but China is here. You said that Europe collapsed. Okay, but Europe is also just on our eyes. The same would happen with capitalism. Maybe it will be a little bit different name, and maybe not. It would be different, but nothing disappeared. Even the Roman Empire is just now have its representative in nowadays. It's Italy. So, and Soviet Union have its representatives. It's Russia, and the conflict with Ukraine, like always in Russian history. So what can I say more? It would be changing. That's what I want to say. Can there be another system for persons' self-realization? The socialist system and Soviet version didn't take place. Now China is trying, what I was already saying, to make something so special out of capitalism. It will soon become clear what will come of it. In fact, we must already realize that the multidimensional global crisis is developing. There is a lot of talk that something needs to be done, but there is no case, and the situation is only getting worse. There is no answer. All the time, remember after the crisis 2008, 2009, how many slogans and how many appeals were saying by the leaders of the states, something needs to be done. And what happens? Nothing. And we have all the problems which brought us to that crisis still in place. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. The situation is getting only worse. Everybody is saying that something now needs to be done. The answer is in the field of values. I think I'm just now trying to tell you what I think in a positive way. I think that because of the technical progress and this fourth industrial revolution and very specific developments in computer science, in internet, everywhere, I think that answer is in the field of institutionalization of values. It's a very special issue. I'm ready to speak to you sometime. It's a very big issue. The answer is to think strategically, counting not for today and not for the near future, for decades. This approach is by far the most practical. Today, with such a speed, high speed of development of societies and the world, it is necessary to think and to make decisions looking on decades forward in front of you, not back, not great America again, but the great America, let it be great America in the future. And this is two different stories. This is two different games, you know. This is, and the great whoever, whatever, in the future, great Russia in the future, great Europe in the future, great Asian economic area for the future, I think, because of modern society, postmodern society, and political entropy, the future must be based on values which must be institutionalized. Partly it was done in Europe after the Second World War. That's why European Union was so successful many years. And it will be successful after the troubles and difficulties. But it is not enough. But it's a very serious example. I'll give very short explanation. If you would have a look what happens with Americans, with United States in Afghanistan, then this idea would come again to your mind, because they have a lot of money there, a lot of power, military power, but because they have nothing in common with values of the people who are living there, all the story failed. So it's a long story. I want to stop it. This approach, I want to repeat, is most practical. And attempts to limit humanity's thinking too short and medium-term prospects lead to huge loss of time. 10 years have passed since the crisis of 2008, and the world in 2020 is confronted into a new crisis, also in this area as well. In the global economy, the institutionalization of values should be expressed in setting goals such as overcoming the choking overproductions in the countries of the golden billion, real institutional support and gradual economic alignment of the poor and the poorest countries and continents. This is the fundamental expansion of the world markets. The institutionalization of global competition is essentially the main recipe for overcoming the constant threat of the next financial and economic crisis on a global scale. In business, it should be first of all about the movement towards the institutionalization of business integrity. At the same time, the source of trust should be first of all the personality of the entrepreneur and not group, corporate, racial, or national affiliation. If to make a long story short, I would say, put it like this. Can you imagine institutionalization, even difficult to say in English, institutionalization of equality? Apparently, the vector to be followed should be equality of opportunity. I'm a liberal, I'm a leader of liberal party. So for us, for me, for my political colleagues, equality of opportunity, equality of opportunities is extremely important, not just like a declaration, but namely like institutional support, how to create that kind of society and world when everybody have the same opportunity at the very beginning. Some more things. If to speak about today, is the state responsible for the institutionalization of equality in general? All the recommendation of economics concerned about the growth on equality. They are all in the line, but in the reality, it is very far from that. However, it should be noted that in the modern world, both anti-monopoly policy and ensuring conditions for competition, which is extremely important, become a problem. What to do the multi-monopoly of transitional digital platforms is completely unclear. And that's another big question. I understand that maybe it is not matching too well on your question, but I'm trying just to explain the network around these issues.